Let's start off by talking about some initial design and planning for your level. Now, of course, this is one level we're going to be making throughout this course, and it can be very large. I mean, we've played games where levels are just huge, and of course, in 4 weeks we don't have a lot of time to do that. So we're going to encapsulate everything down and make a level that we can actually succeed at in the amount of time that we have available, but also really cover everything that you would do in a really, really big level. So you'll be able to take what you learn here and just expand upon it, do more of it, spend more time on it. You'll just have bigger, better stuff. So with that in mind, I like to begin with initial design and planning phase before I actually go in and start modeling or making anything in any software. And for me, usually it's pen and paper, but you can write this up. You can use graphing tools or anything like that you'd like. I recommend you keep it as free and loose as possible. And I know we've all seen tons of probably documents and pictures online from various game companies that show this really detailed, amazing pre-production work that went into things before they made levels. And let's be completely honest with each other. All of that stuff comes from companies with millions of dollars and many months or years to burn making very large, big budget games. The reality is we probably don't have that anymore. Very few people have that anymore. And it's questionable as to whether or not that actually is a benefit or not, because you can make a lot of decisions on paper that aren't necessarily going to be fun when you build them in the game. I'm sure we've all played those. Anybody played those games? I have. I know I have. I've made that mistake myself, so I'm here to tell you how this works so you don't necessarily waste that time and make that mistake yourself. The key is that you want to be able to iterate, and in the next step, when we actually take these ideas we do here and turn them into our white box, we're going to be just iterating over and over. It means just like a painter wouldn't start if they're painting a beautiful landscape. They wouldn't paint a really high detailed tree and then go paint a really high detailed lake and then go paint a really high detailed city in the background. They would just lay down a wash of colors to kind of get the layout of the painting, and then they would build it up slowly. Add, here's some brown sticks where trees are going to be, and here's some kind of blue and gray where mountains are going to be. And they would slowly build it up until it all had a lot of detail. And that's what we're going to do with our game. Rather than making a bunch of decisions right now on paper, we're going to get the main gist of what we're doing. We're going to get the big important stuff in a pile so we can work with it as we iterate and keep ourselves on track, because when we iterate, you can also just really have a lot of scope creep and have a lot of fun and just run off in some direction and end up nowhere that's, again, fun or interesting. So initial design and planning. The point here is to get very clear on what your level is, and just as importantly, what your level is not. Okay, so really we're just coming up with pretty much a list of things that you're going to do. Make sure you get in your level, and things that you're definitely not going to. And what do I mean by not going to? Well, say you're making a game with, say, 10 levels in it. You're going to want some progression, right? Certain characters will be introduced in some levels. That means if you have a character introduced in your 4th level, you can't have that character in the first 3 levels, right? You don't even want to talk about them probably. So that's the sort of progression. You're going to do the same thing with your character upgrades or powers or things they find. Like you'll have a list of things that say, they're going to get this certain weapon, for instance, or this certain superpower or whatever it is your character has. We're going to give it to them as a reward for completing this section of the game. So in the first levels before that, we can't put in challenges that use them, right? Now, on rare exception, you can do that with really good game design. I know, for instance, the recent Batman games did really good at that, where they would put in challenges like there's a frozen wall you can break through or a thing you can climb up to. You see that you want in, but you can't do it yet because you don't have the power. But they were very good about it because they keep looping you back through the same areas. So I'm not going to talk about that so much until you'll just get a hang of how to do that when you get more of these basics down. So know that you can break the rules all the time. Everything I say here, you can probably break and bend or find an exception to, but it's best to kind of, game design is that it's definitely this until it's not that. So that's how we're going to iterate. All right. So we're going to talk about the big picture stuff on your level. Is it in interior or exterior? Maybe both. Maybe you go in and out for a while. What's the historical period? Is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? You want to make sure that stuff's really defined. Now, a lot of that's going to come, of course, from your overall game design. But sometimes as you come up with really good ideas for level design, you're going to send that information back to your overall game design and say, you know what? Turns out this is funner, right? That's iterating. Turns out it's funner, this thing we came up with in this one level design. So let's just change this whole thing about the game that way. What's the point of the area, right? Like, why is the player even here? I think so often in games we see things that's like, you know, somebody saw a movie and, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was a giant refinery where stuff went up and down and you could jump on it and things blew up and an airplane came through and you're like, yeah, this stuff's kind of neat, but what's the point, right? This is a story about, you know, the Chinese mafia or something. Why would this thing be in there? Who knows? So, you know, make sure it fits in with your story or make sure it fits in with your game mechanics or something else along the way like that. I'm going to show you an example of a little write-up I did, which will be the sort of thing that your project will be based upon this video.